Hi, my name is Cassidy Patterson, and this is my post-self-assessment for Psychology 808 selection. So I'm just going to go through the objectives that we went over at the beginning of the semester, the goals that I set for myself, and I'll also discuss what I believe is good selection to show how I've developed over the course. So let's get started with objective number 1. So objective number 1 is students will develop knowledge of theory, research, and applications of personnel selection. I definitely feel like I've gained more knowledge in this objective, primarily within selection assessments and also validation studies. So of course with selection assessments, I interview people every single day for my job. However, I was just not aware of all the different types of assessments, assessment centers, and then the applications, the job interviews, personality tests, cognitive ability tests. There's just so many more ways to be able to assess applicants that I was not aware of, so that's very beneficial. Also, just knowing how important validation studies are and getting a better understanding of how those actually impact selection process has also helped my overall knowledge of selection. And what really helped with this is the chapter readings. So the next objective, the second one, is students will evaluate the empirical findings in the areas of personnel selection. So when I started this course, I was able to evaluate empirical findings. That's something that we have covered in many prior psychology classes. However, I definitely now feel I have a better understanding of validity coefficients and how they relate to selection. Like I just said in the last objective, I did not realize how extremely important they were to making sure that you were actually selecting the correct applicant and in the right way in regard to selection. So I really like learning the how and the why. Learning how to actually calculate that is helped my understanding definitely. And what helped with that specifically was those data assignments. The third objective is students will examine the implications of empirical findings and trends for research and practice in personnel selection. This is definitely the objective I feel like I could learn more and develop more in. Of course, I now have a better understanding of the changes in the legal standards and the legal guidelines. However, as far as trends, I believe that selection is an ever-evolving process. So it's kind of a catch-22. I don't know if I'll ever fully be completely aware of everything because we find out new research every day and practices are changing every day. But what really helped me the most to understand the trends with especially the legal standards is definitely the chapter readings. So the fourth objective is students will explain the ethical, legal, and professional standards in personnel selection. As I mentioned in my first video, I started with a pretty good baseline knowledge of this just because this is what I do every day in my current job. But I definitely now have a better understanding of adverse impact, specifically in selection procedures. Of course, we all know you're not supposed to discriminate. You are supposed to give everyone a fair chance, but I truly did not know that the way that assessments and applications and even, the interview process could, potentially eliminate a good candidate, just off of the way that they were asking a question or the types of questions they were asking or what exactly they were assessing on or whether it actually related to the job. So that has been very beneficial, and what helped the most was the chapter readings, but also the SIOP and guideline assignments as well. So the final objective is students will demonstrate ability to integrate their understanding of the topics in selection and present for an appropriate audience. I'm sure you can tell by now I don't really have a problem with talking in front of people. I definitely already felt comfortable with that, but just overall having all of this new knowledge, it has really given me more confidence to be able to act as an actual consultant, and I would feel comfortable explaining these types of selection issues and procedures and impacts to a client. One specific assignment that I really enjoyed was the consulting project with the application. And I think that's because I can relate that to my everyday life. However, like I already mentioned in a previous slide, it's really interesting for me to be able to fully understand why we're getting that adverse impact. And also, this has been very beneficial because it gave me a way to practice telling somebody else in a professional manner. So my 2 goals for this course, it's actually funny, now that I'm rereading these, I am kind of seeing that these might not have been the best choice of goals, and I think that might have been because I was not really sure what to expect with what we were learning in the course. But for the first one, learn more about the use of technology in the selection process. Of course, we did touch on the use of certain technologies with the different types of assessments, whether they be on the computer versus pen and paper, and how that can also, have adverse impact. But I didn't get as much information as I thought that I would. As far as the second goal, have a better understanding of how the selection process affects employee attitudes and retention. After this course, I can see that making sure that we are using the selection procedures correctly to put the right employees in the right positions definitely will have an effect on those attitude and retention rates, because those people are going to want to stay because they're going to want to, they're going to enjoy their job. Finally, I'm going to briefly go over my definition of good selection. So overall, this class has taught me 3 things. Number 1, you have to have valid selection procedures. If your procedures and assessments are not valid, then of course there's going to be no true relationship to the people that you hire to who's actually going to be successful in the job, and that completely negates the whole purpose of having a selection process. The second part of this definition is that it's free from discrimination. I think especially into today's society, it is such a hot topic, and it is very easily, stories are easily spread like wildfire. And so just for the benefit of the organizations and even their reputation, you always want to make sure that your selection process is in good standing legality wise. And then of course, overall, a good selection process must successfully predict job performance, because of course that has what I've learned overall, the whole purpose of the selection process is meant to do. So thank you, and I had a great semester.